Greetings again, Pastor Sherwin, Ebenezer Revival Center Ministries. We give God thanks for you to be able to be welcomed into your place and into your space. Today, I want to get right into just a note, remind you of some stuff from the Word of God, and to hopefully encourage you and to strengthen you. It's important that the human has strength and encouragement. Is one of the basics of human emotional and spiritual growth. So I want to do that today. We want to go to the book of St. Luke, chapter 2, and I'm going to read from verse number 1 to verse number 5. And it reads like this. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed or censored. It was basically a census. And this census was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, everyone into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary his espoused wife, being great with child. And I will rest there. I want you to note carefully and observe that Joseph and Mary traveled from Nazareth to Bethlehem in Judea to be censored, or as the King James Version has it, taxed. This was decreed by the rule of the day, the power of the day, and that being Caesar Augustus. Caesar decreed it, that everybody under the jurisdiction of that empire had to be censored from where they were from, where they originated from. And Mary and Joseph would have traveled a great distance. They said she was great with child, had to travel about 90 miles, and that probably would have taken about a week to get there. So you can imagine the challenge that they would have had along the way. And if she's riding on the donkey, the little potholes that the donkey might step into, that would cause her challenge. But nonetheless, we give God thanks that she was able to fulfill that, and Joseph was man up enough to be able to sustain Mary at that juncture. So we see that they had by decree to go to their places of birth and lineage so that they could be censored. It was displacement. They were displaced. They weren't able to be where they would have been comfortable. They had to go back to a place. And the thing about it, as we read in the Word of God, they had to end up renting an inn, but it ended up to be a stable in that inn rather than a nice room with all the amenities. We much later encountered Christ after having gone through, from his birth right through, he would have gone through this displacement, because we also learned that he had to run away. Joseph then had to flee from where he was to run to Egypt so that the child Christ would not come under the murder and abuse of that one Herod. And we see God's provision for his own when he allowed Mary and Joseph to be able to escape and go down to Egypt to escape what Herod was doing. He was abusive and murderous. So we much later then encountered a Christ, mature, purposeful Christ. And he's now showing the fine balance between obedience to man's laws versus submission to God's laws. And if you look to Matthew chapter 22, and we read from verse number 15, let's look there. Matthew 22nd chapter, and we look to the 15th verse. There's something quite interesting here. Then went the Pharisees and took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk, or Jesus. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that you are true and teach the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Tell us therefore what thou thinkest thou. Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he said unto them, Whose is the image and superscription? And they say unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. There may be some that may be frustrated in this time of displacement. It may seem almost abusive. You can't travel the way you would like to, when you would like to. And then we have, as time progresses, further restrictions. It's not necessarily easing up. It's getting more restrictive. And it means that you have to be confined to your place, because there are certain things that have to be censored. There are certain things that have to be done by the powers that be. And they have the power to make you and I stay put, or regulate how we move and when we move. So we see here Jesus, who would have from his birth encountered displacement with his mother and his father Joseph, and then he would have had as a young child to be displaced further by running away from where they'd gone to settle again down to another place. But the bottom line is that we see Christ, having been matured, found favor with God and with man, as we read earlier of his childhood growth. He's now at the point where he's flowing in the service that God the Father called him to do for your sake and my sake. And he's now encountered by persons trying to feel him out, to catch him with his own words. And they wanted to know if it was lawful to give tribute to the authorities of the day. So he brought to them a nice little equation. The money, whose head is on this money? They said Caesar's. Well, he said, give Caesar what is his, but give God what is his. I want to encourage you today, we have to walk in obedience. The Word of God said we have to be subject to the authorities. But there's a thin line at points where you feel that you don't have to be subject because whatever reason they're restricting you. But I want, especially to believers, to make you understand, Jesus has given us the simple remedy of balancing. There are laws that we have to obey, but then way above that is the law of God that we have to adhere to. So follow the rules as long as they are not abusive to God's law or to your own person, to the extent where they are totally unreasonably not able to be done. Other than that, you depend on God. God will give you wisdom, as God gives Jesus wisdom, to show them this is Caesar's money, give it to him. But he also is careful to say, but God has requirements also. You have to choose by wisdom, by the word of God, what is the requirement. What will you do? You have to be wise. You have to be full of understanding. And this comes through the unadulterated word of God. The word of God is wisdom. It gives you wisdom how to operate so you do not violate man's laws, but at the same time, you give God what is. He's sovereign and he has requirements. So we live to his requirements, but in wisdom, we follow the rules according to what are given by the authorities. As long as they do not violate God's will and word, we follow the rules. So I want to encourage you, although it would be challenging for you at this point in time, to be wise to be aware and render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but at the same time render to God what is his. What does God require of you? You love your neighbor. You love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, all your being. But loving your neighbor is very important. Look out for somebody. Encourage them with a word from God. Encourage them as a person. And I want to say, especially for those of you who have lost a loved one in some way, for whatever reason, and you're grieving at this point, it would be double challenging to you. But I want to encourage you to lift up your chin, lift up your head, knowing that this will pass, because God is a merciful and loving God, and he will make a way for you. God bless you.